everybody. Welcome to A Winter's Tale, a play written late in Shakespeare's oeuvre, 1511, first staged in May of that year publicly, and then later staged in front of the king at court toward winter of that year. I often wonder how it was for King James seeing Leontes in all of his rage, hot temper, qualities that James was known to display at times himself, and wondering whether any of that hit home to James. But first of all, let's look at the premise of this play, which suggests that social law in two very important ways is completely ruptured. First in the civic sense, and second in the family sense, and both together. So Leontes, king of Sicilia, has been having his friend Polixenes, king of Bohemia, to visit. They are old childhood friends, and in the true Aristotelian sense of boyhood friendship, they say that they were as twin lambs that did frisk in the sun before they went off and each made their separate marriages. And now Polixenes has been visiting for several months. Having tried to persuade him to stay, Leontes turns to his wife, Hermione, and says, "Can you persuade him?" And in a lovely, playful, open exchange, Hermione does persuade Polixenes to stay. From there, all hell breaks loose, and we go to the deepest, starkest winter through this cataclysm of rage. First of all, Leontes insists that his wife is lying, insists that his friend is lying. So he basically strips himself to nothing. He tries to ascertain if his son could possibly be his, so he pushes his son away. So he's basically alone with these fears. But what of his family and his friend? Polixenes is sent back to Bohemia. Hermione is thrown into jail where she gives birth on a stone-cold floor. She tries to advocate for her innocence after her baby is born. Leontes will not hear of it. She falls down and is presumed dead. Mamillius falls down and dies. So Leontes is there alone with members of the court to hear the soothsayer say, "Hermione was innocent. You've been utterly confounded. But it's too late. Everybody is dead or gone." So here we have the beginning of Leontes' winter's tale, his purgatory. And the keys to this emotional renovation are given to Hermione's gentlewoman, Paulina. Paulina is the one who says that the heretic has lit the fire and is not the one being burned. So this is such an important line, because everybody knew King James was a famous witch hunter. He loved to catch witches and have them burned as heretics. And here we have Paulina saying to a king, the heretic is he who burns, not she who is in the fire. I wonder how much to heart, or if at all, James took this incredibly challenging social commentary, or whether for him it was so bound up in the fantasy of A Winter's Tale that it didn't come home to him. Certainly, looking 4 centuries later, it comes home to us. So the baby is sent away, accompanied by Paulina's husband, and he can't bear to kill the baby as ordered. He leaves the baby in a basket with a couple of things that it might need, including some gold, and then exits with one of the only stage directions in Shakespeare, but certainly the most famous, pursued by a bear. So again, he's part of the devastation of this fall into winter, that he dies as well. And here is the baby, picked up by 2 shepherds. And then, remember the fantasy structure, we move forward by 16 years, and we reopen in Bohemia, where the baby, Perdita, the name for lost, has grown up into a beautiful young woman. Now, I mentioned before the challenge that Shakespeare makes to the kingship and to the idea of the king being inspired by what is right and good, and how that challenge is directly made when we see Leontes' foolishness and stupidity and his willingness to do harm. Well, here we have that feudal system used in a different way. So we have the idea of the highborn being meant to be higher in terms of attributes and movement in the world. And so we see Perdita, although she is brought up by lowborn shepherds, is yet a princess in her being and gestures. And of course, when the son of Polixenes, Florizel, meets her, he falls in love with her and she with him. And so prince and princess, shepherdess to prince, but shepherdess who is really a princess, fall deeply in love. So they go back to Sicilia, and everything looks like it's going to work out beautifully. But there's a couple of things here that Shakespeare really underpins or underscores this play with. And again, I remind you of the idea that it's like, as Harley Granville Barker says, an orchestral score. The darkness here of what jealousy does and is. We don't explore it in this play in terms of its conditions, but we do note that it is part of the human imagination. And so, as Shakespeare did again and again with the imagination in comedies, histories, tragedies, romances like this one, is he suggests that aspects of the imagination, be they passion, be they hatred, be they the deepest jealousy, these qualities become enfolded with the reason. The danger is that we tend to think that the imagination is distinct from reason, and that when we act reasonably, we are acting upon fact. But what we are actually doing, Shakespeare suggests, is we are acting with a reason that is always suffused with the realm of the imagination, the realm that belongs to dreams and sleep. And so in this play, you'll see Hermione saying to Leontes, this is a dream. And he says, your actions are my dreams. So the imagination has such a power to change and to reshape completely what we see as reality. So we come back to Sicilia and we see the young prince. We find that Perdita is actually a princess. Paulina brings Hermione out from her 16-year death or hibernation. And again, it's a questioning of the patriarchy of that times, that somehow it's okay for Hermione to have been buried for 16 years awaiting Leontes' renovation. Then she comes out, and ironically he says, but Hermione was not so wrinkled as this seems. Anyway, there is the miracle, perhaps not so much that she is still alive, but she can still find it in her heart to forgive him. And this is what I'll leave you with, the image of, I don't know whether any of you have ever had a little plant that you have left and forgot to water, and it goes to what you think is death. It withers, and yet when you give it a little bit of water, suddenly a tiny bud bursts forth again. This is the miracle of spring out of winter. This is the miracle of forgiveness out of punishment. And I think this is the miracle of love, which perhaps sometimes can begin again, and we can get a fresh start. Anyway, it's the miracle of this romance play, Winter's Tale. See you next week.